On the edge of a narrow alley behind a small blue house, there once lived a cat named Milo. He was not born in that house. He had wandered there one rainy evening, thin as a shadow and trembling from hunger. The world had been too loud for a kitten so small. Engines growling, strangers shouting, doors slamming shut. Milo had learned early that survival meant silence. But that night, as rain slipped from the rooftops and pooled in the cracks of the pavement, he smelled something warm, milk, and something else, the faint scent of kindness. The blue house belonged to an old woman named Mrs. Elara. She lived alone, her children grown and scattered across cities that never called her back. Her hands were wrinkled like folded paper, but when she opened the back door and saw the small orange kitten staring up at her, her eyes softened in a way the world had forgotten. "Well now," she whispered, kneeling slowly. "Where did you come from, little one?" Milo did not answer. He only stared. But when she placed a shallow bowl of milk on the ground, he took one careful step forward. That was the beginning. Life inside the blue house was quiet. The floors creaked gently. Curtains swayed in soft breezes. There were no loud arguments, no sudden storms of anger, only the ticking of a clock and the hum of a kettle. Milo grew. His fur thickened into a bright, warm orange. His whiskers stretched long and delicate from his cheeks. His green eyes, once filled with fear, now shimmered with comfort. Mrs. Elara talked to him constantly. "You're a good listener," she would say while knitting. "Better than most people." Milo would sit on her lap, purring like a small engine of contentment. He did not understand her words, but he understood her voice. It was a sound that wrapped around him like a blanket. Every morning, she would open the back door and let him sit on the porch while she watered her plants. He watched butterflies drift between flowers. He listened to the wind comb through the trees. The world outside no longer frightened him, because he always had a place to return to. Years passed in gentle rhythm. Milo learned the patterns of the house, where the sunlight fell in the afternoon, which stair creaked loudest, how Mrs. Elara's breathing sounded when she slept. And he learned something else. She was slowing down. It began subtly. She would sit longer before standing. She would hold her chest sometimes, pressing her palm there as if trying to steady something invisible. One winter evening, the air colder than usual, Mrs. Elara did not rise from her rocking chair. Milo noticed first. The house was too still. He leaped from the sofa and padded toward her. Her knitting needles lay on the floor. The yarn trailed like an unfinished sentence. He nudged her hand with his nose. It was cold. He meowed softly, then louder. The sound echoed against the walls, but She did not move. Milo climbed into her lap, pressing his body against her chest as he always had. He waited for the familiar rise and fall of breath. It did not come. Outside, snow began to fall, quiet, indifferent. Milo did not understand death. He only understood absence. And the house had never felt so empty. The next days blurred into confusion. Strangers came. Voices filled the rooms. The scent of unfamiliar shoes and heavy coats overwhelmed the air. Milo hid beneath the bed as footsteps moved through the house he knew so well. He heard them say words he did not understand. Passed peacefully. No family nearby. We'll handle everything. Handle everything. They took her away. And then they left. The blue house became silent again, but this time the silence was hollow. Milo walked from room to room. He searched for her scent. In the chair, in the blankets, in the small indentation on her pillow. He curled there at night, pressing his nose against the faint trace that remained. He waited. Morning came. Evening came. Days stacked upon days. The back door no longer opened. The milk bowl remained empty. The clock kept ticking, but it sounded louder now, like a reminder that time moved on without asking permission. Milo grew thinner. He meowed at the door. He scratched at it, but no one answered. One afternoon, the door opened, not gently. It swung wide with the metallic groan of neglect. Two men entered, speaking briskly. "Clear it out. House goes on sale next week." Milo watched from the staircase. They moved through the rooms, lifting furniture, carrying boxes. The rocking chair disappeared. The curtains came down. The scent of Mrs. Elara faded under dust and cardboard. When they reached the kitchen, one of them noticed him. "Hey, there's a cat." The other shrugged. "Probably stray. Leave it." Doors open. Stray. The word meant nothing to Milo. But when they left, the door remained ajar. Cold air slipped inside. The house no longer belonged to anyone, and perhaps neither did he. Hunger drove him first. He stepped outside cautiously, paws touching the frozen ground. The alley was louder than he remembered. Cars rushed past at the end of the street. Children shouted somewhere distant. The world had not paused in grief. It had simply continued. Milo turned once, looking back at the blue house. It no longer smelled like home. He took a step away, then another, and with each step, the distance between him and everything he had known grew wider. The streets were unforgiving. Food was scarce. Larger cats guarded territories with sharp teeth and colder eyes. Milo bore scratches along his flank from battles he did not want but could not avoid. Rain soaked him. Wind chilled him. He slept beneath dumpsters, beneath broken fences, beneath the open sky. But every night, before sleep claimed him, he remembered the warmth of a lap. He remembered the sound of knitting needles clicking. He remembered a voice saying, "You're a good listener." Sometimes, when the moon was high and bright, Milo would sit alone and stare at the sky. His whiskers trembled in the cold. And though cats do not cry as humans do, something glistened at the corners of his eyes, tiny droplets that clung to the tips of his whiskers. Tears at the tip of whiskers. Weeks passed. Milo grew weaker. One evening, limping from a fresh wound, he collapsed near a small park bench. The world blurred at the edges. Sounds faded into distant echoes. He thought of the blue house. He thought of Mrs. Ilara's hands. And for the first time since that winter night, he allowed himself to stop fighting. Snow began to fall again, soft, silent, covering paw prints, covering pain. Milo closed his eyes, and somewhere in the fragile space between memory and surrender, he heard a voice. Good listener. His breathing slowed. The snow settled along his fur, and the night grew very, very quiet. But not quiet enough to hide the sound of footsteps approaching. A pair of boots stopped near the bench. A small gasp cut through the cold air. Oh no. Hey, hey, little one. Warm hands lifted him, and though Milo could not open his eyes, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. The world did not end that night. It shifted. And somewhere between darkness and dawn, Milo's story continued. Warmth returned before sight did. Milo drifted in a haze of dim light and distant sound. He felt motion, gentle, rocking, and something soft beneath his body. A scent surrounded him, not the scent of snow, not damp cardboard, not rust and oil. This scent was clean and faintly sweet. Stay with me. You're okay. I've got you. The voice was younger than Mrs. Ilara's had been, softer but uncertain. It trembled slightly, as though afraid of losing something it had only just found. Milo tried to open his eyes. The world blurred into pale shapes. He felt fingers stroke the top of his head, hesitantly at first. Then, with growing reassurance. You're freezing, the voice whispered. Why were you out there alone? Alone. If Milo understood the word, he would have known it well. When he woke again, he was wrapped in a blanket inside a small room. The walls were cream-colored. A window let in muted morning light. Somewhere nearby, water boiled. He tried to move. Pain answered. A sharp sting along his flank reminded him of the fight days earlier. His legs trembled when he shifted. Footsteps approached quickly. Oh, you're awake. A face leaned into view. A young woman, perhaps in her 20s, dark hair tied back loosely, eyes tired but kind. Her name, as Milo would later learn, was Hannah. She crouched beside him, holding a shallow dish. "I don't know if you can hear me," she said softly, "but you're safe, I promise." Safe. The word meant something. He smelled it in her hands. She dipped her fingers into warm milk and brought them close to his mouth. Milo hesitated. Instinct battling memory. Then he licked. The taste flooded him with something deeper than hunger. It tasted like the beginning of everything. Hannah lived alone in a small apartment above a bakery. The air always carried a faint scent of bread and sugar. At night, the hum of ovens drifted upward through the floorboards. She had found Milo by accident. She had been walking home late from work, exhausted after a long shift. Snow had begun falling unexpectedly, and she had cursed softly under her breath until she saw him. A small orange shape, half buried in white. At first, she thought he was gone, but when she knelt and saw the faintest movement of his whiskers, she didn't hesitate. She had once owned a cat as a child. He had disappeared when her family moved away. She never stopped wondering what happened to him. Maybe that was why she could not walk past Milo. Some losses leave doors open inside us, and sometimes something small and fragile walks through. The days that followed were fragile. Milo drifted in and out of sleep, while Hannah cleaned his wound, wrapping it gently. She spoke constantly, unsure if he understood, but unwilling to let silence swallow the room. "You're stubborn, you know that," she would murmur. "Fighting like that." He watched her from half-lidded eyes. Her apartment was smaller than the blue house. No rocking chair, no ticking clock, no garden. But there was warmth. There was steady breathing at night. And when she sat on the floor beside him, reading quietly after work, her presence felt anchored. Still, Milo did not purr, not yet. Trust, once broken by absence, rebuilds slowly. Winter lingered. Milo regained strength inch by inch. He stood again, walked cautiously, explored corners of the apartment with measured steps. He found the window first. It overlooked the street below. Busy, loud, alive. Cars passed constantly. People hurried with scarves wrapped tight. He stared for long stretches. Hannah noticed. "You miss outside?" she asked gently one evening. Milo did not turn. He remembered cold pavement, hunger, the blue house, snow. He did not miss outside. He missed someone. Hannah sat beside him. "You know," she said quietly, "I think you belonged to someone once." His ears flicked. "You look like you were loved." The words settled in the room like dust motes in sunlight. Loved. Was that what it had been? The lap, the knitting, the voice. Milo blinked slowly, and for the first time since that winter night long ago, He purred, soft, uncertain, but real. Hannah froze, then smiled, eyes bright. "There you are," she whispered. Spring came gradually. Snow melted into gutters. Trees began budding faint green. The world softened. So did Milo. He began sleeping near Hannah's feet at night, then beside her, eventually against her chest, where he could feel the rhythm of her heartbeat. Different from Mrs. Alara's, faster, stronger, but steady. One afternoon, Hannah sat cross-legged on the floor, assembling a small blue collar. "I think you deserve a name," she said. He tilted his head. "I'll call you Milo." The name hung in the air. It was the same name Mrs. Alara had once chosen on a whim, laughing as she scratched behind his ears. "Milo," she had said, "it suits you." Hannah did not know that, but somehow she had chosen the same word. Milo's whiskers trembled. Coincidence, perhaps. Or maybe memory travels farther than we understand. He walked to her and pressed his forehead against her hand. She fastened the collar gently around his neck. A small silver tag caught the light. Home. Months passed. Milo grew strong again. His fur regained its brightness. The scar along his flank faded beneath new hair. Hannah left the window open sometimes now, letting warm air drift in. Birds perched on wires outside. Sunlight pooled across the floor. But Milo did not leave. He would sit at the window, watching, remembering. But when Hannah called his name, he always returned. Because this time, he understood something he had not before. Love can disappear, but it can also return. Not in the same shape, not in the same voice, but in warm hands lifting you from snow, in quiet rooms where your breathing is noticed, in someone whispering, "You're safe." One evening, nearly a year after Hannah found him, Milo lay curled beside her as rain tapped softly against the glass. She had had a difficult day. He could tell. Her movements were slower, her eyes red. She lay on her side, staring at nothing. "I miss him," she whispered into the dark. Milo lifted his head. "My old cat, I never got to say goodbye." Silence filled the room. "I always wondered if he thought I abandoned him." Her voice broke. Milo rose and stepped onto her chest, carefully, placing his paws near her collarbone. He leaned forward and pressed his face against her cheek. His whiskers brushed her skin. Something wet touched their tips. Tears. Not his this time. Hers. He purred, louder than he ever had. A steady vibration against her heart, as if to say, "You didn't abandon him. And I wasn't abandoned either. We are here, together." Outside, rain fell gently. Inside, two lonely hearts found something like peace. Milo's eyes drifted closed. He no longer searched for the blue house in his dreams. He still remembered it, the rocking chair, the milk bowl, the quiet love of an old woman whose absence once shattered his world. But memory no longer hurt. It had become part of him, like the scar beneath his fur, like the softness in his gaze. Hannah stroked his back slowly. "Thank you," she murmured. He did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. And this time, when a small tear gathered at the corner of his eye, just a single glistening drop, it did not fall from cold. It did not fall from hunger. It rested gently at the tip of his whiskers, not from sorrow alone, but from love remembered and love found again. The rain continued through the night, and for the first time in a long while, Milo slept without fear of waking alone.